I didn't smoke. Cigars, beer, rum, cigars again. But where my passion has been all my life is cigars. I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. I've said it a million times. This is the greatest industry in the world because of three things. Because you're not judged by the color of your skin, you're not judged by religious beliefs, and you're not judged if you smoke a $3 cigar or a $50 cigar. There's the occasional asshole that, has been thrown out of more cigar shops than bars, the drunks out of bars. But we're a great community. I would say, and you've been around for a long time, I would say that about 90+% of the manufacturers are good people, 90 plus. There's the occasional asshole and the occasional wannabe. And I would say consumers, at least, I would say they're up to 95, 96. You get the occasional asshole. You go into a lounge and it doesn't matter if you have a lawyer, an IT guy there, a guy who's flipping burgers. Everybody's just having a great time. That's what makes our industry so great. There is no other industry in the world. That's right.
Jose, what a wonderful intro speech.
And thank you so Reinhard.
Much for entertaining our dear friends, all our audience, whilst I was having tremendous issues with setting up the Facebook live stream today. Well, Mickey phrased it perfectly when he said, even Wi-Fi's are wearing masks during COVID. And with that, welcome one and all. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is my pleasure and honor to welcome you back to the Light 'em Up Lounge with a rather special show leading up to Christmas, a super special guest. I was waiting for this for a long time, and finally we made it happen. Micky Pegg, welcome to Light 'em Up. Thank you so much for taking the time and being here with us today.
Thanks for the intro.
Mickey, let's dive right in. And you had an illustrious career in the cigar world, even well before All Saints Cigars, your own brand of premium cigars, boutique cigars now. You worked Capitol Hill, you worked with Davidoff in retail with wonderful companies. Did you ever envision where this could ultimately lead to, or was there like a game plan or more an interesting sequence of funny coincidences?
No, it was funny coincidences. It's basically I was in college at Catholic University, and I liked cigars, and I started to have a love for them. It's a long story. I used to fetch cigars for a senator when I was an intern, and then from that point, I got a job at Georgetown Tobacco, which was just a blast because to be part-time there, you worked 3 to 4 shifts, 6 to 9, and you had to work one weekend shift. And you got half off on the cigars, or you paid whatever wholesale plus 5%. Plus, you got plenty of free cigars, especially when some of the owners would come by and visit. There wasn't that many brand owners at that time. They were true manufacturers, as we know today, and that was just exciting to meet these people, pick their head, because you could the fluency of information wasn't like it was today. So to hear from George Padrón, who was similar in age, and meet Robbie Levin from Ashton, and Carlito and Cynthia and Wayne at that time that would come around, and there's Manny. There's so many of those greats, and quite frankly, when you're in college, you had to wear a suit just because working on Capitol Hill and all those things I did. So I worked part time, but it was something. It gave me an opportunity to do something I really couldn't afford at that time. So it afforded me to have these great dinners, be able to sample gorgeous wines, whiskeys. I learned from Michael Jackson. If you remember the old Michael Jackson, not the entertainer. He was one of the. He was a little bit of a pickle to deal with, but he was great to listen to. Whether it was talking about whiskeys or whatever he was talking about, even beers. So I think that was the biggest thing. It was just, wow, this is something I normally couldn't afford to do, and I was still chasing my dreams of going to Wall Street, and then politics got in the way because I got an internship, and I fought it forever until Davidoff approached me and asked me to take over and help them go from a broker to a direct sales force and be a regional sales manager. At that point, I had 3 or 4 states, and pretty much everybody knows how the states are. It's bigger. We have all our subcultures. And if somebody went down, they were like, Mickey, you do it. Or Mickey, you take the people down on the point of merchant trips down to the DR. And that's how I got to learn from Hanky and from a high level at that point. And then, you know, from there, I was at Davidoff for 5 years and had the opportunity to go to CAO. And that's when I met Jose, obviously, and just the opportunity to learn. And it was so Nicaragua and Honduras. I didn't spend too much time in Honduras, but a lot of Nicaragua at that time was learning to the business and learning from that acumen. And then, you know, Jose coaching and teaching from literally from, you know, from the DR perspective. But the Nicaraguan community was so warm because when I was at CAO, I was VP of sales and on the blending team with Tim Osgood and John Huber, who now is Crown Heads. And that afforded me an opportunity. Those people were just so warm and welcome. They didn't hide anything, you know, learning from the nurseries to those pieces. The blending, where I really got fascinated, and it's great that Jose is on the call because he was the one that would come in and direct us a little bit because we worked on several projects in the DR with Jose and his team at that time. And that's where you kind of learn, you know, that aspect. And I have a craving to travel, to learn, and this afforded me to do it at that time when I financially didn't have the means to do it. So that's where, and then it got in my blood, and that was it. So, and then, you know, from that standpoint, I don't want to answer too many questions ahead of time. So,
Mickey, after college and whilst you worked on the Hill, you also started working, I believe, the door in the hospitality industry, and then you mentioned the cigar retail component that came in. What are the individual qualities and learnings that you took away from that specific time and all these different ventures and experiencing different industries, people from all walks of life? What did you take away from all that?
I love people and I love experiences. I love stories. I love hearing stories. I love telling stories. And when you're in Washington, D.C., the amount of friends and the amount of people that you get to meet from around the world, it's like when I never got to visit Austria, which I really wanted to do. But when I had to go work in the German market, because my grandmother, my mom's mom, is from Munster, and my grandfather, my mom's dad, is from Dusseldorf. So I've always was fascinated with that region, that culture, and so, you know, yeah, you know, I don't know if I'm really answering that question correctly, but it's I think it just, I knew I wanted to be around people. You know, I did sell mutual funds for 7 years in between, and that was great, and it afforded me to have the ability to get back into the industry. But, you know, working the markets and selling Wall Street, to what I sold to basically, we call it retail, but it was financial advisors, and they would sell to the business owners of those communities. And a mutual fund is very much like a cigar. There's a wrapper, there's a binder, and there's fillers in there, like the stocks and stuff that you put in there. But you can't smoke a mutual fund. So,
would you say that all these different experiences also clearly showed you not just what you really liked in business and that you loved other people, but really, you know, made you aware of this is what I'd much rather not be doing for the rest of my life?
right.
E.j. being stuck in like corporate and financial industries for the rest of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. It was once a month. It was absolutely fabulous when that direct deposit went through. But 48 hours later, I was, you know, Winston Churchill called it the black dog. You know, I got a little bit of that black dog that was chasing me a little bit. It was also like my first year out of CAO. Once they sold, it was actually Scandinavian Tobacco here in the States. They say General Bob. No, it was Scandinavian Tobacco. And then a year later, they rolled it into General, moved it from Nashville to Richmond. And I was the first to go. You know, 1 year, everybody was gone that was in a leadership capacity. And I was heartbroken. I didn't smoke a cigar for a year. It was very tough on me. And then I got back in and was able to finish up my master's at the University of Pennsylvania, so the mutual funds. And that was great for me and my family. But if I'm going to go out and work and travel and work 12 to 16 hours a day, I want to do something I love. That's something I'm passionate about. Something that was very good to me. The industry is very, very good to me. The people ahead of me were always good to me. You know, talk about with Jose, from a very young age. So I've been very fortunate that way.
Now you said that very tough part where you almost left cigars aside entirely. What was it that gave you the confidence to go right back at it and venture into it yet again, even though with a different perspective?
Stupidity. So everybody said, you're stupid. But yeah, it was watching, when I first got out, there were people that came to me and said, listen, we have the money. We know you have the ability, the resources to have these conversations with. And I wasn't ready at that time. I didn't have a creative idea. I packed up the blends, and anything that I worked on, I put it away. I just didn't have it. And finally, and quite frankly, was able to put some money together to do this. But I made a commitment that if I'm going to do this, it's got to be full time. And our first container to come in time was February 2020. So that was a hell of a time to launch. So in the States, if you talk to your average retailer, they'll tell you those first 2 months were the worst 2 months they've seen in many years. But when they reflect on the whole year, they'll tell you it's one of the best years they've seen in many years. And they're even, referring to it as the mini boom. Problem is, if you didn't know what was behind that curtain because of the curbside service, there was nothing to do. I was very fortunate that a lot of shows like yourself brought me on to give me an opportunity to tell my story. And the local retailers in the Philadelphia and the Mid-Atlantic area that I had old friends with, they brought my cigars in. And what I did to go from crazy is I was literally hand delivering cigars without selling direct. I was hand delivering the cigars to consumers all up and down I-95, and then having their credit card go through the closest retailer that supported me, that had my product in their store. So, because I was not going to sell out of my car. And we knew, and I got to be honest with you, I was a little frustrated when I saw some of these young brands selling direct to consumer. I'm like, you can't depend on a retailer to build your brand, but they will, and they can. They can also hurt your brand. Those people are mom and pops. A lot of the retailers you deal with on a daily basis, do they have a nice lifestyle? Do they have a nice house? Are their kids going to the best schools? Because, private schools are very big here in the United States, and they're expensive, just like college. But they have everything into it. And I couldn't see not doing that. And, when I talked to my partner, Frank Leo, he was like, oh, are we still staying down this track? I go, absolutely. There's no way we're going to budge for this. We will get through this. And just celebrating our second year, we're at 10% over what we thought we'd be after year one. And I take that as a win. So there's still a lot of runway left, a lot of things to do.
It's very interesting that you bring up that point, that direct to consumer, because obviously I wanted to talk a little bit about your previous experience when you started in the cigar world entirely. But
Georgetown Tobacco, yeah.
Just focusing on that now, I mean, we all agree, let's put it that way, that the internet and online digital have disrupted pretty much any industry there is. And same is true for the cigar industry. And there's more and more direct to consumer efforts, as you rightfully mentioned. And the online world is just giving all the traditional brick and mortars, who we all agree are the backbone of the industry, right, a hard time. When you started, the landscape was very different.
Completely different.
And probably personal relationships were different. The way people were talking to each other, working with each other, collaborating with each other were different. But also the entire structure, all the different tiers and the different stakeholders of the industry, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
The way cigars were brought to the market back then is dramatically different from what it is now. So when you think about those different tiers and moving parts, whether it's sales reps, independent brokers, all that has constantly changed. How was it different back then, and where do you see it right now?
So it was pretty simple. So let's see. I got started part time in '89 in the retail. Let's kind of hyper accelerate to 91, 92, because nothing really had changed. We did come off to where by laws, you had to go through a distributor to get your product. So a retailer had to go through a distributor. They couldn't go directly to the let's call them manufacturers. They couldn't go directly to the manufacturer. They had to go to a distributor. That model went away. Now, lounges didn't exist. There was a handful of lounges, and very few of them were able to get direct. You could talk about Grand Havana Room and a couple other places. But if a town had a lounge, they had to buy their cigars from a retailer, and they gave a certain percentage off or off a retail, and that's where the margins. So the retailers were they were like the distribution chain for restaurants when you could smoke where you could smoke anywhere, or even specific lounges. And now lounges are such a big part of the culture, at least in the United States, in the sense that they are a retail store with a lounge, or a lounge with a retail store inside it, better, I guess would be better said. And they can buy direct, and that doesn't tick off any other retailers that are, that are what we would call cash and carry, which means they don't have a seat in there or any of that sort. So I think that's the biggest difference, from an infrastructure, from a marketing structure. It's also, with social media, what it's done, and with Zoom calls and all these podcasts that I'm on all the time. It's these help accelerate it as well, and also give you that foot, because our philosophy at CAO, and my philosophy today, was the most important person in the whole organization or organism of everything is the consumer, but we have to respect the conduit, how they get a hold of that cigar. And now that is a retail front. Now, some of these retailers I deal with do have good web presence. As long as they honor the pricing and not discounting, then yeah, obviously we work with them as well.
Do you feel like the industry has to change in a certain way in order to stay up to date with what's happening in other industries and online and digital in general? Or would you say that the cigar industry is more like the safe haven where analog is still the real luxury?
I don't know if it's a safe haven, but I think that's the structure. It's a consumable. Food's a little bit different, but if you look at the liquor structure or the beer structure, it's very similar. I think that we're a touch and feel thing. So I will admit that, unfortunately for a lot of retailers, they are a tasting venue for box purchases. You don't see the box purchases unless you have an event like you saw when I was younger, in a retail standpoint. But from that standpoint, so say I'm a brand owner, I'm not a manufacturer, right? So if you go to Napa or you go to Sonoma, they have tasting rooms because they don't actually have their own vineyards. So, but you still have to go to that tasting room to have that. And that tasting room might be there, but the wine store that's 4 blocks down will still sell that same wine. Mm-hmm. So I think there will be more direct, but I don't think, I think we'll be slow to move. Hey, when I go in and I see a retailer and they ask me, what's my fax number? I laugh. I go, there's still that old school kind of mentality. So,
which is, Jose mentioned it before we actually went live on Facebook. We all love this industry because it's the most unique industry there is, with the most talent of people, or the most wonderful personalities in the industry that make it so beautiful, and thus we cherish it. Whilst at the same time, we somehow have to face the realities of the new normal that we're all facing, and the challenges that come with it.
It's interesting that, you said that you guys are still in lockdown right now. We got another wave of this Omicron or whatever it's called that's happening here, but we can still go into cigar shops now. So California is, that's its own republic, the Republic of California. New York is a little bit different. They got a bunch of issues going on there. They have the regulation, they have the tightness of COVID, and also they have a 75% excise tax. So a $10 cigar is $17.50 before you get it to the register. So that's a whole nother ball of wax. But those retailers are still surviving. So quite frankly, I haven't really paid attention to New York, which would be a place that you want to pay attention to. But Now I am, because they're reaching out to me about me bringing my product into their stores. So, yeah, I mean, it's an experience, you know. Somebody once referred to a cigar shop with a lounge like an opium den. That's, you know, there's people can't smoke anywhere. Like, you know, you're in an environment right now that where you can't have a cigar. So people need those environments to have those, whether it's their wife or whether it's, you know, their living arrangements or whatever the scenario is. I think it's going to be a strong part of the culture, at least, you know, in the United States, as I see it. So
I couldn't agree
I
more.
can't wait to get on a plane and come over and tell my story. I missed Western Europe, so
It will be a pleasure to have you and host you. That's for sure. Mickey, let's talk All Saints, and I'm curious as to how all the different experiences and your previous jobs, whether it's within the cigar industry or outside of the industry, how has all that impacted the way you wanted to launch All Saints and wanted it to come together as a brand and as a way of life?
well, I wanted to come together a lot faster, except COVID. Yeah. So, I mean, from the political background that I had, I worked for a trade association. That time it was called the National Soft Drink Association. Go figure, a big fat American working for a soft drink association, which is now called the American Beverage Association, because bottled water, they had to change their name, or really taking over from, you know, that soda component. I think my biggest influences was just the things that come along with cigars too, as well. It's like the wine, the whiskeys. We're showing the double blanc earlier. I think Ray was showing. Not I got the name right, but I think my biggest influence, if you look at some of my packaging, you could say Davidoff was an influence on me. You know, using the shield. If you look at from a blending standpoint, that's from my CAO days, working with the likes of Perdomo and Nestor and some of those people at that time. I think the experience has taught me that do something you love. I wish I would have started my own brand earlier. You know, I wish I wouldn't have waited until I was 50 years old. But maybe, you know, everything has its course. And so I think it was meant to be for me to learn the way I did learn the industry and get out and be able to put my own capital together and come back in with my own capital to do this. And I have a partner too that put up just as much capital as well. And he's more behind the scenes. He's back of the house, I'm front of the house. So.
How difficult has the situation truly become now? When we talk supply and demand, so many products being on back order with most of the retailers, and then you step in with a fairly young brand. I believe that makes things even more challenging, right? Especially when you think about the large factories that will primarily try to focus on their own stuff and then their biggest accounts, and then at some point, you know, comes the little guy,
Right.
And without putting people or brands into buckets, but I mean that's just the reality of how it is. How do you look at that?
So I call us faux linear, you know, in the sense that all my stuff I'm stealing from Robbie Levine's model. So it's funny, I went to business school, University of Pennsylvania, and I still talk to one of my professors, and he goes, "Did you not listen to anything I told you?" Is that he has one partner in Central America and he's got one partner in the DR, right? So from that standpoint, that's the model. We don't have a partner in the DR, or are we close to looking at? I guess we're looking, but we have enough to do in Central America. So working exclusively in the Tabacusa factory, and we have a project going on Parisio right now that we're trying to bring to market. And that's keeping me busy. Now, with that said, the only thing that's not made in Nicaragua are my vistas and my cigar bands and the cellophane. We don't have a cellophane issue. The cigar bands getting down there is not an issue. I mean, it's you know, they need to be done 2 months before you need them in production. The factory I'm using right now is Tabacusa. And that factory is primarily owned by Rocky Patel, and you know, I work with Amika and Gerber down there as well. And Rocky owns one of the box factories that I use. and the other box factory seems to be doing fine. It's not that they have a surplus of wood, but they don't have a lack of wood either. It's not like what's going on in Honduras. So when I think when you hear about Nicaraguan cigars that are back ordered, I don't really think they're leaf issues or tobacco issues. I think they're more of a packaging issues or where they're getting their packaging from. And my hypothesis, and Jose, you have to correct me on this. I think part of the reason, our stuff is coming into port either in Miami or Tampa, and I think that's the same for obviously it's the same for the DR, and we're all a part of CAFTA, and I think that puts us in a little bit of an advantage situation too about getting stuff. I have one container that got delayed, but really not that bad. So I had to air freight some stuff up to fill because my St. Francis, which just came out, is winning these awards and everybody wants them. So the dedication was the first one we took to market. So we had to air freight some of that situation up, but it really didn't add anything to the bottom line, with the way we had our margins set up. So at this point, knocking on wood, we should be okay. If there's anything that's stopping the supply chain, it's the thing between our two ears, finalizing the colorization so I get in trouble. So here's a funny story. So I work with Amika, and I've been working with Gerber, his cousin, a little bit more, because if I get too close to a Rocky blend, they'll tell me, like, no, you can't do that. Like they have a blend on market I'm convinced was a blend I was working on that was the same as one of theirs, and they flagged me off. And I love jalapa. I mean, I absolutely love jalapa. So every time I go down there, Mika goes, Mickey, there's other tobaccos besides jalapa. And I go, I know, but I always want jalapa. I always want in the middle. So when we set it up and I start testing with the burritos, it's like my wife, when I'm coming up with the packaging, she goes, Mickey, there's other colors besides red and blue. And I go, what? Forest green, khaki, gold, black, So, from that standpoint, yeah. So.
I mean, I've seen more and more reviews where the journalists are talking about maybe here and there a specific cigar doesn't feel quite right. The tobacco feels a bit younger or harsher, rougher around the edges. Jose, I'm sure has an opinion and a perspective on this as well. But have you noticed any changes in the raw materials that you're working with, that you're being offered, or that it's just becoming more challenging to get to the right quality of raw material?
I will tell you that I have access to most of Rocky's library tobaccos, but there's some tobaccos he won't let me work with just because he needs them for his stuff. So, from a quality control standpoint, I mean, I really haven't seen anything from an aging standpoint. Like our stuff right now, I always say a year, but 10 months to 12 months before we can roll it out. And you can tell that by the burn. I mean, the most important thing you ever do to a cigar is age, I think. So I really haven't seen that. Have I heard that from other people? Yeah, but I'm around and I'm smoking other people's products and I'm getting feedback from other retailers. I really haven't heard any quality controls, especially from some of the legacy brands. And obviously, you're not going to have that with Fuente. I'm not just saying that because Jose is on here. I mean, they set the standard on a lot of those pieces. They were talking about age before anybody else was talking about age. They were talking about Cameroon before anybody else was talking about Cameroon. I would love to work with Cameroon. It's one of my favorite tobaccos. It was one of the first tobaccos that I discovered when I was young that I loved working with. But it's I would need some help on that, and I'd have to make sure that I get the right Cameroon too. So that I think that's all spoken for. I think it's sitting in Jose's closet in Macedonia. So, yeah. So, but from my standpoint, of course, I'm going to say no, whether or not. But looking at some of my competition that's out there, or it's not competition, but other brethrens and bigger legacy brands, I haven't seen it or heard it. Quality of cigars are better these days. The marketing of them are better than they've ever been. When I was at CAO, we were like one of the only brands of that size out there. Wouldn't you say, Jose? I mean, was there anybody? I mean, you were helping out a lot of brands at your time when you were that part of the DR? Do you see a lot more brand owners today than you did back then? I would imagine, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and talking about CAO, I mean, we have a lot of young people here, but people don't remember that CAO, the Oscars, you, John Hubert, Tim, what CAO brought to the industry was something that had not been seen. You know, the Sopranos, the Flavorettes. They took all of a sudden a couple of years over the part of the with Tatiana. They were the dominant two brands in the premium flavored size. And you know, the industry does miss Tim and the John Huberts of the world, what they did, but it's a different world. You said it very clear. Look, if you go and see what social media and shows like this one and Coop and Dave Garofalo and Bear and all this has changed. And even the magazines, even though they still have a lot of influence, it's important, especially Cigar Aficionado and Cigar Journal. But at the end of the day, right now, the interaction amongst consumers, it's just amazing. Yes, it's critical. And the thing is, what people don't understand, it's not about the amount of times you post on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
Amen.
People are wrong about that. It's the content. Sometimes I go 2 or 3 days and don't even post, but then I get, 30, 40, 50 comments, 500, 700 likes, things like that. But you have to come up with content and things that are interesting. I see people that put up a $50 a bottle of rum in a great cigar. They get 3 likes because they don't know how to romanticize and interact with the person. Because at the end of the day, even if you're with a brand, more than the brand, you have to sell yourself. You have to be humble. You have to have a personality. You have to respect consumers, retailers, other vendors, and also other manufacturers. I'm going to leave it at that. This is Mickey's show.
Oh, yeah. But I will tell you, off that, Jose and Reinhard, is one thing we were active on social media. I don't think that our content is there. I try to show pictures of me with people on my travels. But going around listening to consumers, listening to retailers, and listening to consumers, like, for instance, our next 2 lines, one just came out, Colorado, and we have a Habano. These are 12 count boxes that are 4/3 in a cabinet size. I should have one around here to show you, but I'll find one in a second. I'll show it to you. But I've had other friends in retail. Mickey, what are you doing? You should be 10/10. You should capture that space. So what it is, they're 12 count boxes, a little play on the Apostles, 4/3 cabinet style. They fit in there. So if I say, hey, Reinhard, can you bring in all my cigars in there? Well, Mickey, shelf space, that's the biggest pushback. It's very hard to get your cigars on the shelf, but it's the easiest part of the whole process. So it's still very hard, but it's the easiest part. You got to keep it on there, but to capture that shelf space. Now, when you do events, it's a 12 count box. Also, I think it's going to be very conducive when we go into the European market. I don't know about all the regulations and all those things that have to be on that. But we're very excited about it, and the response has been tremendous with the Colorado on that. So now you have we average about a $10 cigar, so that's a $120 box of cigars for an event. And the shelf space, and when you have them next to each other, it gives me where they can see the nomenclature enough, where they can see the branding of All Saints. So that's the innovation. We're getting there. But also, I like, on our social media to have more poignant content. But I just love showing pictures of me, seeing all my friends and retailers and consumers out there, the people that are reacting to us as well. And sharing a little bit of what's going on behind it when I'm not traveling with my family. So my family is very, very cigar oriented as well.
Mickey, last time we spoke with J.R. Davis from Blue Smoke of Dallas exactly about the shelf space issue and how brands are thinking and working on the customer experience at the point of sale. Do you think that in general brands should be more strategic or more precise on the way that their brand is being displayed and experienced in the walk-in humidor on the retail shelf? Or would you say ultimately don't mess around all too much with the retailer's business, and it's up to them to figure it out and represent the brands that they believe in the most proper way?
Yeah, it's a hybrid of those. So one of the reasons we did those 12 count boxes, so it's very similar. This is actually a 20 count, but it's the same thing. Trying to get a camera, but it's smaller. So it's a 12 count box. The retailers have responded well to that. Now you have other people out there that have their formula of the way they structure, they put in there what they put on their shelf talkers and those scents. We're designing a shelf talker. This has got to be boring to everybody, but we're designing a shelf talker, and our shelf talker that we have that we're going to put in there is if you had an honor system in a retail store, right? And somebody walked into that store outside of seeing that brand and seeing the cigars, what could be a sales associate for you with nobody in that store? And that's the shelf talker. Tell them a little bit about the strength, not the body. Body and flavor are two different things. Give them a small descriptor of it, the size, the shape, and the strength. And I believe talking about awards are those things. Back in my old days, we're like, who gives a shit about an award until you get a good one? You talk about it. Retailers don't care about them. All the true cigar guys say they don't care about them. But I will tell you at events, in a store, it does reflect on some of those younger smokers, those newer smokers. They will gravitate to that. So I think because I came from retail, you got to coordinate them. It's like even when we come up with a strategic plan to do an event, what works for them? What do we think that works? And let's work on this together. I think it's got to be a partnership. There is a retailer there's a vendor out there that does very well, but I think he strong hands the retailer a little sometimes, and that there's a couple of them actually, and I think that has pushback, but that also gives me an opportunity. I've always, even back in my old days, we always worked with the retailer. We didn't have minimums. We didn't. Now, if you supported us, you got things that were harder to get your hands on, and you got the quantities that you wanted. But I believe that you have to work with the retailer. You can't force their hand. But a good retailer will know how to show your brand and want to show your brand, because that means something has to go out. Something's going to come in, and they're going to give you that opportunity to be successful. They bring in a brand, they invest in a brand. They don't want it to fail. They do not want it to fail.
You mentioned reviews and ratings briefly. All the top 25 lists and best in class and best of the year are just around the corner. Right. And now for you as a brand owner, do you look at it differently? And is it like that strange mixture of a blessing and the burden at the same time, where you're somewhat dependent on the feedback and the reviews that the cigars are getting in the market? Or
well, the feedback has been good. The ratings, for the most part, have been good. So I haven't seen any kind of repercussion. But again, if you sit around and if you think that social media and ratings are going to sell your cigar, you're not going to sell a cigar. You might for a little bit. You might have a little spike. Ratings can help your cigar. Social media can help your cigar. But you have to have other strategy. You have to have content. You have to have personality, and you have to have a belief in what you're doing. So, for instance, the St. Francis, it just won an award 5 minutes ago. It got #1 for Ash Quarterly. From what I know, it's going to be in the top 5 and the top 10, and a couple other big reviewers that are out there that people tend to listen. Half Wheel gave our dedication a 91. I got it didn't really open up any more doors, but they gave the St. Francis an 85, and one of the descriptors was barnyard manure. Was one of the descriptors in there. And I called Charlie and I said, Charlie, he goes, you're calling about the review? And I'm like, no, listen, I've been down this road many times, but I'm like, you got to come up with another name besides barnyard manure. I go, you called my cigar shit. He goes, no, I didn't. It's manure. And I'm like, fertilizer or whatever you want to call it. But I'm like, you know, and I wasn't mad. I just said I didn't appreciate that. Anything else you said? He goes, well, I gave it a good review. And I go, listen, I'm not here to start a war with you, and we're fine. I talked to Brooks recently, and but it got an 85, but that has not stopped. That's getting more attention than my dedication that got a 91. So that's going to happen. It's going to happen again, and I'm going to get another good review again, and I'm going to get another bad one. So you just keep going, and you know. So it's funny. The one I got a 91 in, you know, it's about a 5 from 1 to 10 on a strength category. And I got a lot of great reviews from it. And a lot of my dear friends who I trust their palate, who I know wouldn't lie to me, gave me glowing accolades on it. The St. Francis, it's got a little bit more strength. I got some Bodega in there, so it's going to give it a little bit more of that salt forward. Using a squirrel wrapper. But, you know, it's about a 6.5, and it's been astonishing with that 85. And I know people that looked at that 85. So yeah, I think where it has the biggest impact is when you're doing a hands-on, when you're actually doing an event and those numbers, it really brings attention, because not everybody's going to, you know, our name is not Davidoff. Our name is not Opus. We haven't been in the market that long. We haven't earned that right to have that kind of legacy imprint for a purchase, because like there's people out there that will buy a Romacraft no matter what, because it's Romacraft. They'll buy Fuente because it's Fuente, and we haven't earned that yet. There's a lot of runway for us to do something like that, and we have to get a lot of things right for a very long time, and that's why I think it's important for me to do this full time.
Also, what I think is highly interesting about that is just how consumer behavior shifts and what people are actually looking for in the marketplace. And I believe that the landscape was very different when you started in the industry compared to what it is now.
Right.
Most people would probably confirm that the number one question everybody is asking when people walk into the humid or the retail space is, what's new, right?
Right.
And over here in Europe, and probably the same is true for older generations in the US, they were all about those legacy brands or their trusted cigars, different lines and brands they were smoking all the time, and they were going back to those experiences that they're very familiar with. Do you see that shift as well now when looking back at the path of your career?
Yeah, but I think everything's still anchored in, you know, the tried and true. So so hell, when I was working for Davidoff and I first started going to Switzerland and Germany, I mean, the only New World cigars that even had a chance of selling were Davidoffs and Fuente. Now, again, I'm guesstimating. You probably have access to those numbers better than I do, and especially probably Jose. But now I understand. You know, you got Cigar Aragua in Amsterdam. You have all these interesting places, these lounges that are experimenting with the New World cigars and bringing those in. But these New World cigars, to even have any kind of chance in the European market, it is coming from having some kind of depth and time in the market. You know, there's a guy, who's the guy in Germany, cracks me up, the monkey guy, Delay.
Sally Dalai, yes.
I love, I mean, that guy is just having a blast. And he very ever, well, I haven't seen him in a while online, but like he very well showing Cubans. He's always showing all the New World stuff that he has that he's behind and excited about. So, but you know, with our market, yeah, it's but what it is when you get that new excitement of something new as a new brand, what are you using that to stabilize yourself and build a foundation to become a legacy brand? You know, it's like I just got 2 new brokers, and they're actually starting their brokerage, and these guys are known for hustling and doing a good job. And I said, you got to be hungry but patient, and that's what we are. We're hungry, we're patient. You know, we're full throttle, but we're going to be patient. We're in this for the long haul. This is not. it's going to take time and the traction, and we're kind of going, like this. And so, and I don't want to go like this. I want this nice and, and keep that and build a nice foundation. I did it, I think it was Coop or one of the shows, and they said, well, Mickey, you helped do it before. And I said, well, oh, no, it was Cigar Authority. I said, well, he did it twice before. And I said, well, first of all, Davidoff already had a foundation and they had a champagne budget with a champagne product. I go, when I went to CAO, we did things a little bit more strategic. And what I'm doing is they were delivering a champagne product at a beer price, and what's important about that, and also they were $8 million organization. I took them off, and they had 2 solid brands under when I took over the sales and built that sales force. So there was a foundation. We're still mixing the concrete over here, at All Saints, and we want to make sure we do it the right way and lay the right foundation so we can have that growth and grow with it in a healthy and organic way.
Mickey, we had a great question from Mark over on Facebook. He's watching the live stream, and he was asking, how large of a role does pricing play in your blending decisions and tobacco procurement?
And the blending decisions, none, because we're on compressed margins right now. So at a $10 cigar, we absorbed a price increase last year. We're figuring out if we're going to absorb it again, and if we do increase our prices, are going to be nominal, but we still be in that $10 to $11 price range before we get into state taxes, obviously. So from a blending, no. From an entry into the market, yes, because we're on compressed margins. We should be a $14, $15 cigar if we wanted to have those super healthy margins. But instead of, like, if you look at our marketing, we don't have swag. We get batches of t-shirts. We got little things that we need to get through. We spend our time and our money is on tobacco and the things that, airplanes, trade shows, those pieces. That's where we're doing our spend. So if you look at it, when we took these compressed margins, we looked at that as an advertising cost, as a marketing cost to deliver a product, because the sweet spot wasn't that $10 range. Again, there's people that come to market with these 20, come to market. It's not like they have, I see established brands when guys are moving 20 million cigars, sticks, and they're coming out with a $20 and $30 cigar. They're having a tough time. Also, do you get pigeonholed into that you're that type of, that price range cigar going forward? Another reason why we want to do a valued cigar that's around the $6 and $7 range. But it's too early. Do we have something that we could take to market? It's a killer name. I love the name, and I love the blend, and I love the price point. But I don't want to get us pigeonholed that we're too below a price point that we need to be. I don't want us to be known as a $6 or $7. So I hope that answers the question. So, but I will tell you that we definitely did a lot of research, and we wanted to come in, as a $10 cigar.
Jose, I believe you had a question. Fire away, my friend.
Well, first of all, even though we talked a little bit before the show, Mickey, I saw you at the show. I smoked some of your samples. I really did like them. You've been around for a long time. You have a great following. People like you, and I think you're doing things the right way. And like Carlito says in many of our shows, we need young blood, new ideas, new concepts. But if you look, well, 50 is the new like 20. Look, I'm 72, and there's people at 50 that don't change it. I've changed so much, going from company to company and doing, different things and adapting to them. And I could say that I've seen that all that you learned, Davidoff, CAO, and all the other experiences has helped you. Now, one thing that and I'm not going to mention brands, but there's at least 5 or 6 people in the last 8 to 10 years that have really come on. But if you look more than their marketing, and some of them are very good at marketing and their social media, at the end of the day, and I've been saying this for a very long time, It's not about the box. It's not about the band. It's all about the cigar. Because you could have the most beautiful box in the world, the most beautiful band, the prettiest wrapper in the world, and a perfect draw. But if the cigar does not perform,
Correct.
it will not work. Plus, when you're visiting stores, sometimes you got to put the egos aside. You got to be humble. But more than anything else, and I think that's why kind of a majority of people like me, you have to hear. Don't come in all the time, blah, 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 blah. And you know it better than I do. Retailers don't like them. See what they have to say. Listen to them first, and then come up with that. So, Mickey, it's great to see you. I wish you all the best. I'll probably see you at the show. I know that Reinhard will be in Vegas with us next year. I don't know if he had a chance to stop by your booth last year, but I did see you. I did smoke some of your cigars, and I did like them. I think it was the Maduro one that I really liked a lot.
Thank you.
You can remind me. Good to see you, Mickey.
Thank you, Jose.
Brian, over to you.
Hi, this is fascinating. I'm really enjoying this. There's a
Brian,
a
where are
couple-
you right now, real quick?
I was just going to say, actually, I'm in SoCal. I was
Okay.
going to agree with you were talking about the states and private schools earlier, and I'm like, oh man, these fancy people in Southern California, like that is no joke. Like these people are
Yeah.
paying $30,000 a year for preschool. $30,000 a year for, I mean, like it's crazy. Anyway, that was really fascinating. I just have a couple of quick questions. Mostly, I want to see if I can get my hand. You're in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I live right outside of Philadelphia in Havertown. So,
Okay,
it's,
so Okay. I've never been there, but you know what's weird though is actually I order all of my cigars from a shop. Probably, I guess B&B International. You know those guys?
B&B, yeah, B&B is in Philadelphia. It's so they have a lot of black. They're known for their black label. And Vince, who's there now, Vince is over at Sons. But yeah, they have a great little shop. They carry my stuff. So.
Okay, well I'll order it because I ordered from them. I just got a box, but next time definitely I'll add that to the list. They're great. They always take really good care of me. I was curious when you were talking about lounges earlier too, and sort of the importance in the States, the lounge component. How do you feel about the members only kind of situation? As like, are these shops, that's like kind of the way that they're making money? Like, you feel like it's kind of shady, or you think it's a good idea?
I think there's two different components. So, and it depends on what type of lounge you go to. So first of all, let's call them on-premise and off-premise. On-premise means they could actually sell booze, right? So they could sell booze, and a lot of these lounges are relying on those booze sales to compensate for their cigar sales. And I think that sometimes is a hindrance, is they forget about why they're there. And then you have your off-premise, which means they're BYOB. Say they're allowed to be BYOB. Some of them are can, and I let you sneak it in a brown bag and do all that BYOB. So, and then the memberships, I've seen memberships done very well, where you pay for that, you get access to other parts of the lounge or different lounge, but you get money back towards your purchases. Those models, I can't really speak to too much because I don't see behind the scenes, but there's certain things I'll tell you. There's etiquette that it has to be in a lounge. You should buy your cigar there. I have a little bit of a problem if somebody's got to buy a cigar, if they're buying liquor, if they're buying booze, if they're buying a $20, $30 a glass of bourbon or whiskey. But that's not for me to make that call. 1 to 2 cigar minimum to hang out in there, absolutely, because I've seen the dredges of society come in with their own cigar, buy a bottle of water, and then take up space, and then they're loud, and it's not fair to the person that's coming in and investing into that lounge. So the pay to sit model depends on how they're doing it and where they're doing it. A lot of these lounges, there's some lounges that there's no way you can go into the retail operation, but you can't go into the lounge at all unless you're a member. That I always wonder how that's sustainable that's going to be. The only time will tell. the ones that are like that and say, hey, listen, if you're going to sit down, buy a cigar, I absolutely agree with that. You know, 1 or 2 cigars. You know, so yeah, the lounge, it's important to the cigar industry, so it's definitely needed. Some people are taking approaches that I don't agree with in the lounges, what they're doing and what they do to the consumer when they come in. And also don't agree with some of the ways the consumers are treating these lounges, like it's their right to come in there and buy a bottle of water and bring their own cigar in there too. So
Cool.
depends on the dynamics of it. But I will tell you, one of my pet peeves is like you're going into a nice lounge and they got a nice full bar and they're sipping like a glass of whiskey or whatever you're sipping on that you paid $30-$40 for. Let me bring my own cigar, especially if I'm going to have a couple of those, especially what I'll do if I feel uncomfortable in the situation. I'll tell my buddies, hey, listen, go buy a cigar, then you will smoke my cigar. So we cut both things. And I feel weird that I have to do that, but you know.
Cool. Thanks for the insight. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Cheers.
When you get out to Philly, reach out to me if I'm here. So we'll go out.
Yeah, for sure.
Bunch of great lounges out here. And B&B is a great little place to hang out. It's a small little shop. So I always say a good chef doesn't need a big kitchen. They're not that big of a shop. They got a nice little lounge in the back. And the guys there are great. You love it.
I love them. They take care of me.
They talk out the jowls of their mouth, that feely accent. We call it hoagie mouth here. You know, yay, let's get a hoagie and watch the Eagles. You know, so
yeah, it's good people. Cool, thanks.
Ryan, thank you so much for your question. Before we continue, I would love to share with you a couple of exciting announcements. First of all, as the Light 'em Up family and community, I would love to wish a most wonderful and happy birthday to Ian, one of our most loyal friends, fellows, and guests here at the lounge. Ian, it's your birthday, and we all here at Light 'em Up wish you a most fabulous one. And thank you for being such a wonderful part of our community and a supporter every single week and with all our shows and guests. Thank you.
I've been drinking champagne and whiskey tonight, so I'm feeling quite mellow at the moment.
That's
you
wonderful.
look tranquilo, as we say in the factories, tranquilo.
Rightfully so. Secondly, just for all of you, please mark your calendars. Next week on the 22nd, we have our Cigar Family Christmas. Last year was a blast with roughly 100 guests here at the Zoom lounge and all the icons of the industry joining us. We'll have all our previous guests, so everybody who can make the time. Same time, same station, Wednesday 22nd. Mickey, please be our guest as well, even for a brief moment to say hello and share some holiday cheer. But we'll have an extensive get together with all our dear friends and family. So I look forward to that.
You always have. I love watching your show because you always have a lot of my mentors and big brothers on here. So it's always fun to watch what they have to say, and it helps me.
Thank you so much.
Believe in what I'm doing. So it's you learn from the best. So it's great to see the best of the best are on your show. Plus the fact you're in Austria, I can't wait to visit.
And then one final interesting update. We have big news and a new feature at the Light 'em Up app. Light 'em Up Go has a HERF and event feature live now, and we're super happy and glad to launch this latest and most recent feature where you can all go on app.lightemupgo.com, and we have all the live shows, the podcasts, the weekly events, all the new stuff coming up there, and you can find direct login links to the specific platforms like Jose and Jeremiah's Meet the Professor show. Coop obviously is there, Smoke and Tobacco show, all the big ones, Smoke Night Live. You will find them here updated regularly with an easy log-on link for all of you. And then most definitely, as soon as possible, we'll have the live HERF feature as well, where you can all log on to the app, host your private events, host your HERFs, and invite other people to come and join you. So we're trying to live up to our promise of building bridges amongst cigar lovers around the world and provide the Swiss Army knife for the modern cigar enthusiast with our humble little application. check it out, app.lightemupgo.com, and there's a login code, which is please don't tell, a little speakeasy hint right there for all of you. So if you haven't, check it out. Maddie, I believe you had a question for Mickey. Let's continue and rock and roll. And Maggie, if you're still with us and you still have a question, then please let us know.
Thank you, Reinhard. Hi, Mickey. Hi, everyone.
Hey, how are you?
So, hi, great. Thank you. I'm here in Arizona. It's more of an observation than a question per se. Here in Arizona, we have 66 lounges. So we have the privilege of having some great lounges here. I've had the privilege of attending 32 of those in person. And I've actually seen a big shift in myself personally from going to lounges and talking to them about boutique cigars. I'm a huge fan of boutique cigars. And talking to some of the owners about their reluctance because of shelf space, limited shelf space, which they have to try to, maneuver around.
Right.
And of course, a large number of lounges, of course, look at what the consumer is wanting to buy. And there is a lot of reluctance for consumers to try a new boutique cigar. And interestingly, I've noticed that as Jose Blanco had mentioned before about the social media presence, it's increased because of COVID to the point where I've talked to literally dozens of people that talked about how they weren't able to purchase cigars in person for obvious reasons. And so they turned to social media as a platform to get them to see new boutique cigars and actually experience those. And then those consumers, us, we turn around and ordered a lot of cigars online. It was a big boost, in my opinion, for a lot of boutique cigars. I saw people smoking a lot more different cigars and then communicating amongst ourselves. I also noticed that people were seeing pictures online, seeing people discussing boutique cigars and purchasing more. So I do notice, I've literally had dozens of messages from people saying, I saw a picture that you posted of a cigar. I've never seen it before. Where did you get it? So although I do absolutely agree that the retail portion of the cigar industry is the backbone, I've seen, especially as a 54-year-old woman, I've seen smoking for a while. Thank you. I've seen a big shift in where people that may not have access to lounges nearby, don't have the accessibility that I happen to have, are purchasing more and more online. And I really, really appreciate that you have come up with that you have a cigar brand that you're putting out there. And I haven't had the honor of smoking it yet, but very honestly, I haven't really seen much presence from where I have been in the social media of that cigar. So I'm saying that to say this: social media has actually become a strong element in those of us that smoke cigars.
Oh, absolutely. Talking
to each other and promoting the brand within ourselves, and not all of us pay attention to the numbers, because to be honest with you, a cigar to me is a good cigar, even if I don't like it. It's just not my palate. We all have a different palate, obviously. Right. So and then we in turn around and talk to our retailers, hopefully, and tell them, hey, listen, I tried this cigar. I bought it online. It's a great cigar. You want to consider bringing it to your lounge. So one of my lounges, I actually, kind of like talk to a boutique brand that I won't name. And I said, hey, listen, maybe if you provide some cigars for their whiskey special, they have a whiskey Wednesday, $10 for a house selected cigar and a whiskey, as many as you want to drink. And I said, maybe on that whiskey Wednesday, you could bring in this boutique cigar and give it to the people that buy that special to get them interested in it. And believe it or not, they brought in a boutique brand because the people that smoked that cigar on that given Wednesday were like, this is awesome. Where can I get this? So they decided to bring them in.
So that presence is, so first of all, I have to get out to Arizona. So I'm concentrating on territory. Arizona is an amazing cigar state. It's probably one of the best, on the West Coast. Always loved, back in my TAA days, which remember we used to go out there quite a bit. Arizona just is amazing from a lounge standpoint. Yeah, from a social media standpoint, yeah, we're gaining ground every day. So it's definitely important getting that out there, getting that exposure. That's if it wasn't, I was in a little bit of different situation because my brand came to market just as COVID happened. So I was still behind the curtains. So that made it a little bit tougher. But what did help was being on shows like this one. So, you know, being on Coop, being on all these old friends from the old days said, hey, Mickey, you know, smoking, you know, with on Kiss My Radio or whatever, KMA. Those were all very helpful in getting that exposure. And from a social media standpoint, yeah, I love these glamour shots that I get from some of the consumers out there that are awesome. We're getting these followers. And so one of our biggest things that we want to do for 2022 is how do we motivate and keep our crew, KREWE, as we're calling them. How do we keep them, you know, from the Mardi Gras crew? That's that spelling. How do we keep them engaged, and how do we motivate them to stay engaged, as opposed to just throwing free cigars out there and doing those things? These whiskey tastes. There's an account I just got into in South Carolina, very similar. So listen, we work with this brewery right here. We do a Holy Smokes on Wednesday, and did that, and they ended up bringing. He brought in only 2 of my lines, ended up bringing all 4 lines after that reception. So that is definitely that it's tactic is not a very good word. I think that takes away from the strategy. I think is absolutely is brilliant, and I'd love to do it. Also, we're trying to get to a spot too where I don't really want to be into a location unless I can support it, whether that's from a brokerage or me being in there and being in face to face and going into that humidor. It was like I said before. It's very hard to get shelf space, but it's the easiest part of the process is to maintain that shelf space and remain that engagement, because you're only as good as your last visit, as I like to say. But I love it. Yeah, I am not opposed to social media. I just don't think I'm doing all the right things. I get a lot of compliments, but you know, I don't know. But if you look at how many followers we have, I don't know, like 1,500 or something like that, then that might be even on the high side. But it's organic. I would refuse to pay for it. Like, get these offers for people to, you know, you can pay to get all these followers, and it's not doing it. It's just I think just taking this climb, and I cannot wait to get to Arizona. Comes up in all our conversations when I talk to my partner. Such a freaking fun state. I love it out there. But I can't wait to meet you. So I'll be out there soon. Thanks for the feedback. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Mickey, on a more personal note, I had the pleasure of smoking a cigar with George Brightman recently, and he told me that you do a Mean Barry White imitation. How did that come together?
I do a what imitation?
A superb Barry White imitation.
That happened in Arizona. It was TAA, and I probably had too much bourbon. And I got up there, and the DJ and Rocky grabbed me. At Rocky and Eric Nording, George Brightman, and then I did it at a couple cigar barbecues out in California too. But the first time I did it was in Arizona. And what I did is I just started vamping in his voice, and I changed the words to what was going on, right? You know, at that party. And I was a much younger and better looking guy at that time, so I used to always flirt with all the owners' wives, and I guess I was kind of doing that and having a little bit of fun, and kind of stuck for a while. So it's funny, last year at the show, you know, Rocky always has a band over there, and he has a little bit of karaoke. He was trying to grab you over there to do Barry White, so you might see Barry White at the PCA. So not see Barry White, but you might see hear an invitation. But it happened in Tucson. We were out on a ranch, and they had a DJ out there, and I jumped on stage, and I tend to have fun if I've had a couple bourbons, so I'm not afraid of a good time. Or rum. When I'm in the factories, I drink rum. It was like, Jose was talking about Brugal. I used to love it. You know, when I'm down in Nica, it's like I don't even take anything down there. It's Flor de Caña. I love Flor de Caña. I love Brugal, Zacapa.
Listen, just a minute. I'm sorry to interrupt. Because I'm packing. Like I said, we're leaving tomorrow, and I missed that part. Did Mickey talk about? Did you ask him about the part that he does a great impression of Barry White?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Mickey at the parties, especially at the Rocky parties, which, to be honest, are the best parties at the TAA. Mickey would get up there, and we all know, with that voice, the Barry White, and but he's also a great entertainer. I think that's what's also made him very successful. But I had to throw in those 2 cents about the Barry White deal.
Yeah. Wow, that's a blast from the past. I keep trying to hide from that.
And another fun story that George brought up was the way that you proposed to your wife.
Oh, that was a great story. I was working at the White House at that time. I was on the advance team for Clinton, and the advance team was like always 2 weeks ahead of the president. And I had a guy named Ted Carr and the Rainbow Room. And it was world famous. Now I think they're only open for events. And what I did is I called ahead. We had just done something there with the president, called ahead, talked to the GM, set everything up. So long story short is I go out, I propose to my wife. I get down on one knee. I said, when you bring out the Moe or the Clico, bring out the Clico and bring out a baked Alaska. When that comes out, no, when I order the baked Alaska, bring out the Clico, I'm going down on one knee. So I go down on one knee, propose to my wife, Kimmy. She starts hugging me, doesn't say yes, and hugging me so hard I couldn't even breathe. And I said, is that a yes? And she said yes. And I jumped up, started dancing around the Rainbow Room, got up there with the flamingo dancers with the little things and started dancing on the stage. She said yes, and the place goes nuts. Then I got a horse and carriage, and the horse and carriage, you got to stay up in Strawberry Fields in Central Park. I got him to go through Times Square. The guy goes, here's the deal. We'll go through Times Square, but if we go through Times Square, if I get arrested or get anything, you got to bail me out of jail and pay the fine and all that. I said, not a problem. Cops come up. I start name dropping. We get out of it. And my wife's hanging out the horse and carriage, showing her ring to everybody. It wasn't that big. I don't know what she was showing. But it was showing, and we went back, and then we went back through Strawberry Fields, and we drank champagne in there and had a really fun night. And it was just, I was so nervous putting it together. I always wore a bow tie. I couldn't tie my tie on the way. She walked on the right side of me, and I had the ring in that pocket, and she bounced off. I'm like, what are you doing? You always walk on the left side. I'm yelling. She's like, we're supposed to be going to a nice dinner. What are you yelling at me about? So it ended up being, it was just a fabulous night. But thank you. That was it was very nerve-wracking, and George and a bunch of people helped me put that together. So there's
a wonderful story.
George and I have a lot of fun stories.
I mean,
it was like one time, what was it? It was Robert De Niro. So we go, you could smoke in Del Frisco's. They had that back smoking room in the back. And at the very back of Del Frisco's, there was this big pillar. And that's where they had always put the stars. Like if somebody was talking to somebody, so nobody could really see them. So I'm supposed to hook up with George, and cell phones, we really didn't have cell phones back then. I'm like, George, where are you? Great, blah, blah, blah. I start yelling. And he goes, Mickey, calm down. I go, okay. So I sit down, go around, I go, oh, hey, Bob, how are you? and I was so shell-shocked, and I sat there, and I was sitting there, and I didn't say a word. And I didn't really get crazy over celebrities or anything, but George said it was the only time that I ever got you to shut up is I had to sit you down next to Robert De Niro. And he goes, I didn't even sit you down. You just sat down next to him. And he goes, I think you scared him, but it looked like he scared you. And the next thing you know, we're riding around town with Matt Dillon in a cab, getting in trouble. I'm calling my wife and stuff. So it was we've had a lot of fun together.
That's wonderful to hear. And I mean, part of the reason why I brought up the proposal story is it just shows to me that besides your tremendous experience in the cigar industry and everything that you have accomplished, both for other brands and now for your own brand, you always stayed a humble and very personal guy. And it's wonderful to see with how much love and care and respect you talk about your family, your wife, your daughters even. I heard it so often on many other shows where you were the featured guest. And that's just a wonderful thing to see and experience, that with everything that's going on and with all the madness of work and running your own business, you're still deeply rooted in that family and those core principles that
Well, thank you.
Make us human.
Well, I have 3 beautiful daughters, and they're very, and my gorgeous wife have been married 22 years. They're like, how do you make 22 years marriage work? I go, well, I spent 11 of them in a hotel. So we've only been married 11 years in cigar years. But no, I've been very fortunate to be on some wonderful teams. That team that we had, my previous, before I sold mutual funds, was one of the most dynamic teams. And nobody put anybody ahead of each other on it. And it was always such a blast. And we were always I've been very fortunate to be surrounded and people to be nice to me and help me and answer my questions and know that I always wanted to do a little bit more, a little bit better. And finally for this dream to come true, which when you asked me in the beginning, I didn't think. I fought it for the longest time. And then, honestly, when I was at CAO, I never thought of doing anything else. Matter of fact, my youngest daughter was born in Nashville. So, and there's one of my favorite pictures is my oldest daughter, who's now a freshman in college. It's 19 years old. When she graduated from Sacred Heart Academy, which is an expensive private school, we lit up a cigar together right at the ceremony. And there's both of us. If you go back, you could see the picture of us lighting the cigar together. Matter of fact, that picture you used of the sunglasses, that's my 14-year-old taking a picture of me smoking a cigar at my oldest daughter's graduation. So, and they've been around the cigar industry almost their whole life. And they even said that to my wife that when 2017, the project started, 2019, we fully admitted that I was in, my daughter's a lot happier. They said, Daddy's happy again. So it's, not that I was really sad, but they could see every day is a new optimistic day. So it's exciting. And thank you I hope I stay humble. I hope I don't ever come across as a jerk. And I just, I lose my temper like everybody else does. But, well, not like everybody else does. I am German, German blood. So.
And I guess that's part of being enthusiastic and passionate.
Well, my family's very supportive, so that helps out quite a bit. If you look at a lot of the family, like a lot of people out there, why they're supportive. You look at the Fuentes, you look at Saka, you look at Alec Pratt, Alan Rubin and his sons. If you look at these successful models on, Rocky, always said that he worked so hard that, didn't have a wife or kids. But if you look at the support that he has from his brother and his cousin and his brother and cousin's family and Dave and Nish and Hamlet, those family and those people that you surround yourself with every day, not all your family's not always your blood. It's the people that are around you. And I think that's where you see the success. If you look at a lot of the successful people in this industry, their family and their close friends are big components of that.
Wonderful statement. Mickey, before we wrap things up, Macy had 2 questions for you over on Facebook, and he just put them in the comments there because he said that he's a young businessman from Arizona with a few ideas in his mind, but he wanted to know, with everything that you learned throughout the years, would you recommend anybody getting involved in the cigar business with what you know now?
Oh, absolutely. Listen, when I got a job at Georgetown Tobacco, that was hard. It was hard to get in there. I can't believe when I see these retailers looking for people. Like, if you want to, cigars, it's more than just a cigar. That's the basis. That's the heart of it. But there's so many things you get access to. You get access to these wonderful people. You get access to these wonderful things that you might not be able to do at a certain level. Whether it's the wine, I always talk about wine and booze. Sorry about that. There's the food, it's the people, it's the places, it's the experiences. You'll go to a place, you'll go to a cigar lounge, maybe in Paris, and you won't go back for 10 years to remember every detail. Those impressions, when something like that has such impressions on you that you can retain for many years and crave to go back and have that experience again. Yeah, there's no other. People are missing out on that. And yes, we need. They're the 20 and the 30 somethings. I'm talking to them on a continuous basis. They're there, the 40, and then they need other people to keep it innovative, keep this industry alive. Like, I hate to say Fuente just because Jose's on it, Liana and the young blood that they have in there, that's keeping their energy and they're coming up with those ideas. Do you ever think freaking pink would be a color that would sell a cigar? Come on. That was a no-no color, green, pink, and all that. Those rules, all those rules, or rule of thumbs, I should say, are getting thrown out the window because of what these people are bringing. It's what are you going to bring to it? You know, what are you going to bring to the table? And you know what? You don't have to have the answer right away. How many people go to undergrad and get a general business degree and then find out what they want to do after those experiences? That portion is just to learn how to learn. You're in a learn how to learn stage. Freaking grab it, go for it. Absolutely, I would do it. And you're in such a cigar-rich state, Arizona, and you have all those wonderful places, California, outside the Republican, not Republican, those taxes of the Republic. You know, there's so much on the East Coast. There's so many different personalities and concepts. I always say, if you've only been to one tobacco shop, you've only been to one tobacco shop. And that's what's so exciting, because every one of them has their different personality. So absolutely jump in. If you have any questions that are easy, email me. If they're hard, text Jose.
A follow-up from Macy on that. He was curious about the most important lessons, both good and bad, that you would share with somebody seriously considering making that run, getting in the business.
I would say
he
one.
wasn't so curious about the super obvious ones, but like the real and most practical lessons that you learned.
Let's see. Let me start from the top. Let me start from a high level. The first important one, and I have to do it myself all the time, is Jose spoke about it. 2 ears and 1 mouth. Number one. And number two, have balls. Don't be scared. Make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. As long as they're not with, from a manners point of view or something like that, you're going to make mistakes. Biggest mistake that I made, I underestimated the 6x60s when I first ordered them from the factory. That's one way I run out of. So biggest mistake that I made. Not keeping my head on a swivel when I prided myself on keeping my head is like when my 110 year came to an end. It was textbook. There was nothing. I was heartbroken, but I should have seen that coming. I should have been a little bit more prepared for it, but God willing, maybe I shouldn't have. And the other thing is just, if you're going to put a business model together, you're going to put a practical model together. And this is from somebody who went to business school. Nothing will teach you more than getting your feet wet. Just jump in and do it. So, and make sure that you have good people around that are going to hold you up when you're falling down. So you're going to need that. So
beautiful. Mickey, thanks for sharing those thoughts and Macy, tremendous.
You froze a little bit.
It was a wonderful one-time together, and I cannot thank you enough for taking the time, joining us, and doing us the honors of joining us today.
Oh, thank you.
Next week, on the 22nd, as I said, is our big Cigar Family Christmas show, and I hope you will all be with us, 2 p.m. Eastern, with the most festive cigar show of the year. And then we have our end of the year show on the 29th with George Brightman and a couple other icons of the industry joining us for a great panel discussion. Hopefully Jose can be with us for a little bit, even though he's traveling as we know, as always. But thanks again for joining us today, Mickey. It was fantastic.
I have one more question.
One final thing. Yeah, sure.
The whiskey and chocolate. Are we going to be able to do that here in America?
I'm actually not sure whether they're shipping into the US. It's a German company.
Can I get the chocolate and I'll find the whiskey?
That we can make happen for sure.
Those are two of my favorite things.
The cool thing about that package is it's not just the whiskey, but it's a set of whiskey cocktails that I have specifically designed to go well with these 3 types of chocolates. So it's a cocktail tasting kit where people can mix up those creations of mine at home and pair them with the chocolates.
I'd love to do it. I'd love to be a part of it. So anything I can do.
Mickey, I'll get you sorted. Let me take care of that. That's at least one opportunity for me to say thank you for the wonderful time that we have spent together, and I very much look forward to sharing a cigar with you in a very short period of time, hopefully.
Will you be in Vegas in February?
I don't believe that.
Or January. I'm sorry.
I'm not so sure if I can make it to TPE, but I'll definitely be at the PCA show in summer. And hopefully in the US before that, for sure. Mickey, before we ultimately wrap things up, one final question, and probably on a more personal note, what do you think we can all do better, and what should we all try to improve on in order to make the cigar family and the cigar industry a better place?
Drop the egos and what can we do to be a better place? I don't know. There's so much love that I have. I don't have anything. Maybe fight a little bit harder together. Obviously we're all banded together at a federal level, but if one state of people, when I say state, region can help another state fight some of these laws, whether they're regulations or whether they're taxes, we should do it. I think we should help out our other, because if it gets into one state, it's going to make it to another state sooner or later. That whole not in my backyard NIMBY, I think that would be it. If we could be stronger at a federal level and be more receptive at a state to state level. I'm seeing it right now with the guys in New Hampshire who have no taxes, helping out the guys in Massachusetts who are in a bad tax scenario. There's a lot of them out there. I'm just choosing that one as an example.
Excellent. Thank you. And I guess as sort of
these young guys in Arizona can get into business.
That's a good one right there. Mickey, thank you so much. It was fabulous. Thanks all of you for joining us today and watching the show. As always, we look forward to welcoming you next Wednesday for Cigar Christmas. And until then, you be safe, be healthy, and light them up. Thank you
everybody
so much
for the time. Thanks.
Mickey, great to see you, brother.
Good to see you.